principled perspective of art. In one sense, if we look at our nature and have the potential to develop a great love, a great sense of fairness, if the purpose in human life is to become a loving, caring, fair, just, and good person, then ideally, the greatest work of art is one's own life. That making one's life a work of art is the highest ideal. But as human beings, we not only work at making our life more loving and more just, but there are specialists in society that focus on what are called the traditional arts. So architecture, painting, music, various arts of this type. We need to have some sort of principled view of evaluating, is art fulfilling a great purpose and something of great value, or is it superficial? Is it something that enhances the quality of human life, or is it something that debases human life? That ideal has to be observed, again, if we are going to make good judgments. What life is about is choosing and making judgments about different experiences, different activities, different things that we observe, let's say, in the world of art. So, for example, if as human beings we recognize that we are truth seekers, beauty seekers, love seekers, our desire for beauty is fundamental to our lives. Human beings, we find out, actually can suffer serious sickness if they don't experience something beautiful. That's why prisoners who are put in solitary confinement, terrible, because not only are they isolated from other human beings, but all they can look at is the four walls. Unless they somehow have memorized lots of poetry, it's very difficult for someone who's suffering in a prison to experience beauty. So we all desire beauty. We need beauty. From the simplest way in which we dress and make sure that the color combinations are right, to our home. Interior design is such a popular form of art now, and actually the great designers all over the world. That's the nice thing, that we can appreciate design from all over the world, because it's so extraordinary how the human being flourishes when they take the best of their own culture and create something that's pleasing. So as human beings, because we desire beauty, need beauty, when we experience beauty, it actually gives us a great deal of joy. Just like when we experience love. If somebody sends you a little note, I asked the students in my class the other day, have you ever written a note to your mom about how much she does for you each day? Not one person raised their hand that they had ever written a note to their mother saying, Mom, I'm grateful. You made my lunch. You picked me up from school. We have a warm house, a warm bed. Where did this come from? Most of us sort of assume, well, that's sort of part of the scene, isn't it? Mother's supposed to do that. Well, ain't necessarily so. So when we experience love, or from our children, when they call us or they say something beautiful to us, there's nothing more powerful than a child saying, I love you. Yesterday, I grew up when Sid Caesar was a great comedian in New York. And funny, crazy guy, but that's like 40, 45, 50 years ago. Turns out my son, who's in another country, sends me these links yesterday, some of the scenes from YouTube of Sid Caesar. I couldn't stop laughing. It was like reminded me of 45, 50 years ago. And here's my son living in Korea, sending me a link to Sid Caesar, who I saw 50 years ago in New York. And it was such a joyful thing. I had to call him on the phone and say, that was fabulous. That he should learn to love the humor that I loved when I was a child or a young person. That kind of sharing is just a simple act of beauty where you just thought of me and that I would probably like this crazy humor. And sure enough, it was hilarious. That kind of reality is, again, expresses our nature. We always have to come back to first principles. What is our nature? What is our purpose? And how do we express those? How do we make good choices? So we teach the children over and over again, from preschool through, God knows, graduate school. How can we keep making good choices that reflect the depth of heart, the depth of love, the depth of care, and justice, fairness? Are we acting in ways where we are fair and just toward each other? So through poetry, through painting, through architecture, when we experience something, or even, art, One of the clips that he gave me of Sid Caesar was like pantomime of him playing the piano, and how he looked like Borgia, the fellow who plays Victor Borgia. A pantomime scene where it was just hilarious, nothing there. And the work of art, actually artists like Charlie Chaplin or people like that, is fabulous, another form of art. So art needs to be related to purpose and principles of a healthy culture. Unless we keep that in mind, what is the healthy culture? What are the purposes and principles that work for a healthy culture? What is human excellence? Do we talk about that much anymore? What is human excellence? And how is that embodied in human beings? And who are our models? Who are the benchmarks? Constantly, those are the questions we need to ask if we're to understand something about art or any form of human expression. So all forms of human expression, the institutions, the things that we create, either fulfill a worthy purpose and enhance human dignity, or the purposes are unworthy and they often diminish, degrade, denigrate human purpose. So if purpose and principles are ignored, culture becomes chaotic and values are undermined. Anybody think about any culture like that? Often cultures spin out, even though that they're founded on profound principles of value. Once those principles are ignored, it's very easy in one generation to spin out. I lived in England in 1963, 1964, and I was amazed how courteous the British were and kind and, just in every way their manners were so gracious, and it was really extraordinary. Well, I went back there some years later, and I thought, oh my God, they've copied the worst of America. It was like everybody was there for themselves, and rather than standing on a line, people were, shoving and pushing, and it was like, and of course, crime is almost as bad in Britain now as it is in America. What happened? In one generation, you can undermine several thousand years of good value. It doesn't take long. It doesn't take long. If your family has been a really wonderful family, you've worked hard to build dignity and value, and all of a sudden your kids start smoking dope and doing terrible things, your whole lineage gets spun out. I mean, that's a reality. So purpose and principles that are ignored bring chaos. Remember, the challenge of every culture is how do we order our soul and how do we order our society? And order is the name of the game. We've talked about virtue is the ordering of love. So love is this powerful force that generates all kinds of activity, but the good choices are virtuous choices. How to exhibit temperance, justice, fortitude, things of that sort. Those things always we've got to be thinking about. That we get up in the morning, go to sleep at night. Those are the things we have to think about. Help me make good choices today. All you can ask from God is, help me be responsible. Really. It's not like God do this, God do that, but God, fill me with your wisdom and love so I can be a responsible human being, rather than give me this and let me have money or whatever. So we're called upon to love the world by creating beautiful objects and beautiful relationships. So whether it be the manners and the morals of the British people in the 60s, and obviously they did plenty of things, the colonial countries that didn't express those manners and morals. And obviously there's the dark side to every good person and every good culture. But let's at least honor the good side. Let's look for what was good rather than throwing out the culture because it has done some bad things. Tell me about a culture in human history that hasn't done terrible things. I read history all the time. I ain't seen a culture that's just sweetness and light is all over the place. It just ain't necessarily so also. So manners and morals are also part of a work of art. That is the work of art that is ourselves. Since we have a nature like God's nature, we can create and reflect our nature in the things we create. Probably the way in which we most resemble God is our way of creativity. Who created all those blue flowers as we came into the building today? Did you see the moon last night? Wasn't that fabulous? Wow, I looked at that. My wife and I, when we see a hummingbird or something beautiful, immediately we say, glory to heaven, peace on earth, bless this beautiful world. Just thanking God. God, I even say it in Hebrew. I only know enough to say glory to heaven, peace on earth, God bless, and then I add the word in English. because it's just so moving to see that the things God creates are so extraordinary because he creates with all of his heart, all of his soul, and all of his strength. And he says, hey, kids, I want you to watch this one. And he creates these princess trees with purple flowers. Check this out. Or check out this cactus. And, the thing is growing. It's called the candle of the Lord. Big cactus with white flowers. I mean, God is every moment on me saying, hey, look at this one. Someone visited my house not long ago, and he started saying, oh, this flower over here is very rare, and this one is actually an orchid. That orchid, I thought it was a weed. I mean, he had knowledge of flowers and pointed out the uniqueness of each flower and named them. So we're stimulated by the degree to which objects please our nature, but it takes work, it takes creation and appreciation. Art demands knowledge, it demands sensitivity, practice. A group of musicians who are working at a very high level constantly are practicing in any art form to gain even appreciation of flowers. I used to love bird watching. I don't do it so much anymore. I think they're watching me. But but I used to know, that's a willet. Wow, that's a red-tailed hawk. And, all these, I used to know the names of them, and it gave me a greater joy, a greater love, because I knew a little bit about their habits and, the mourning doves in the morning and things like that. You get a kick out of it. They become your friends. One of my best friends is the oak tree outside my window. I mean, people like to look at San Francisco and the Great View. I like to look at the oak tree, and some birds visit me, these little willets and stuff, not willets, these little chickadees and things like that. And, we greet each other. How you doing? In fact, there's 2 oak trees. So I greet him, and I say, well, how's your wife doing? And I look at they're friends of mine. I mean, one of my best friends in New York is the Empire State Building. You can have friends of buildings. I've seen that building all dressed up, on certain holidays and parts of the city. I'll look up and there's a certain view of the Empire State Building. And I feel it's my friend. I can relate to the beautiful building. And it's a place where I know how to orient myself. So beauty is something that helps you orient yourself and connect to. And the creation, again, it demands appreciation, sensitivity, practice. You have to work at things. I wrote a book on Shakespeare's plays. I had seen most of them, but then I had to reread all 39 of them. And then reading the plays, looked at, Shakespeare in the comedies and some of the romances, there's an innocent heroine who maintains that innocence and genuine friendship, brings marriage and harmony in society. And when you have tragedies like Othello and Hamlet and Lear, often the main character is betrayed, like Iago pretends to be a friend of Othello, but he's no friend at all. And he betrays him. Love is betrayed. In the end, Othello kills his wife who loves him. So tragedy is the failure of friendship, the failure of love. Look at Hamlet. There's an intellectual for you. Hamlet is wondering, should I do this? Should I do that? Oh, I don't know if I should do that. He ends up killing a whole bunch of people. How come? Well, he can't figure out how am I supposed to act? The ghost of his father says, your uncle killed me. So I said, oh yeah, so what's your revenge? Well, revenge leads to tragedy. He doesn't know how to act. He's always thinking, do I love you, Ophelia? I don't know if I loved you. I did love you. Would I love you? I don't know. He's constantly going in his head and is unable to exhibit that love and passion, compassion, and sense of justice. All he can do is kill everybody around him. And that's a tragedy because he is such a smart guy and has so sensitive guy too. People are smart or sensitive, but often unable to exhibit that compassion or that sense of justice. So in studying Shakespeare's plays even, it's necessary to read them carefully or to listen to them carefully. Whatever, you got to read the text or at least listen to the text very carefully. Then you gain a greater appreciation. You can't, as I say, when I give Shakespeare plays to the kids in middle school, they struggle so much because not only the language, they have no basis to relate to the feelings of these characters. The characters in Shakespeare's plays stretch you, or in any good literature, they help you empathize. One of the principal values of literature is that reading good literature helps you become a good person. Even if it's tragic literature, the Greeks wrote and started basically our tragedies and comedies are largely imitations of what the Greeks did 2,500 years ago. And then the Romans copied them. A lot of Shakespeare's plays are not original plots. They're copies of stories in Greece and Rome and Italy. So we have to then know something about this. If we're going to have a rich experience, we have to deepen. You know, in literature, it used to be in the 19th century, there's a great deal of emphasis on biography. The life of the artist was more important than the work. 20th century, you get explication de texte, explicate the text. Don't worry about the life of the artist or anything else. Look at the water imagery in Milton's Lycidas. I mean, this is what graduate school was about. Or, from Marxist terms, never mind about the biography or the text, look at its impact on society. So therefore, propaganda was very important. You had new realism of the Soviet Union promoting art that would help make you the Soviet man or woman. Propaganda is like that. If you look at propaganda in any totalitarian country, North Korea, you have art that always celebrates the leader of the country. It doesn't develop, it's almost like a false kind of empathy because you only empathize with the leader. And meanwhile, the people around you are starving and dying, millions of them. So practice and understanding of what makes for good art is very important. It's not just reading novels to space out. Yeah, it's okay to enjoy a novel and space out, but that's not what literature and art is about. Again, what are your standards? What is the basis by which you evaluate the best of art, the best of culture, or that which misuses you, exploits you? You know, art, pornographic art, exploits emotions. It doesn't help you become more empathic or more compassionate. It takes those emotions and throws them into abusing an object, or finding somebody that you can make into an object. So if we deeply care for others, for example, we can appreciate the feelings in art, in Shakespeare's plays. It's only when you've gone through life and friends have betrayed you and love has betrayed you that you realize, oh my God, Shakespeare is talking about the things I experienced. Once you have a deeper understanding, or you can do it vicariously through literature, if our emotions are shallow, then we have a limited appreciation of art or others. You know, you can put the great art before anybody, and if their emotions are shallow, it just bounces off. It doesn't mean anything. We have to almost go through a certain experience of life and its joy and its suffering to appreciate art. So creation and appreciation of art demand knowledge of art form, its history and cultural context. One of the things that young people especially lack is context. What was Shakespeare's world like? You know, and how did that world impact him? And to what degree? You know, Shakespeare wasn't a theologian or a minister, but he drew upon the Christian humanism of the 16th and 17th century in England and reflected that in his plays. How come evil is punished and good, you know, brings forth marriage and family? Where's he getting that from? Well, he's drawing upon the Christian humanism of England in that period. So, you know, it's necessary to know the life and times of whatever the particular artist is. What's the cultural context? Then you can see if a work of art is uplifting or not. So creation appreciation of art involves practice. Now, when we go out into nature, then we feel very simply, well, there's a flower, there's a leaf, there's a whatever. You move by it. You don't have to, in one sense, you don't have to practice it because it's so pure and so innocent. You're just looking at the flower, and to some degree, you're deeply moved. Or a bird in flight. Birds in flight just knock me out. I mean, just birds in flight. I just can't believe it. You know, almost any bird in flight. Just the sign of heaven in this world is a hummingbird, from my point of view. I mean, in case you ever get on Jeopardy, the only bird that can fly backwards and upside down is a hummingbird. So that may be worth a lot of money in the years to come. But those spectacular things when we go out into nature. Why does a tree or a flower or a bird move us so much? Because the great creator, God, in his pure and innocent heart, just offers it up. Hey, look at this. Watch the, you know, when I walk by the bay in Berkeley, there's often one heron that's always there, a white heron, to greet me. How you doing? He nods and I nod, and we enjoy each other's company. A white heron is like this fabulous bird that takes off, and even, you know, to see the pelicans were flying the other day, and there's a flock, and how they dive down and just get the fish that's over there. I mean, that's fabulous how they do that. And then they keep it in their mouth for a while and they swallow it. So great artists actually recognize the beauty of nature. Nature poetry is fabulous. Walt Whitman looks at a blade of grass and sees the handkerchief of the Lord. How is that? William Blake finds in a grain of sand, the miracle of creation. These people who are really open, especially, poets who are inspired, they're inspired by a sense of beauty, and they can see beauty. Looking at something else, there's a great deal. So appreciation can be intuitive. You can just go out in the woods. Many of us just feel in the woods, wow, trees and sky and earth, and it's just beautiful. You may not need any kind of stimulation. Of course, the more you know about woods and hiking, and you can, again, get many levels of joy. So we can feel some art bringing us joy without much training. You can look at, if you go to Florence, Italy, and you look at in the Uffizi Gallery, you look at Botticelli's Primavera, and you just feel, wow, beautiful colors and form, and which art demands not only purpose but form. You find yourself enthralled by something that's very beautiful in terms of color. Even if you don't know anything about Primavera, or the three graces, Primavera means spring, then there are these three graces, these pregnant women dancing around. And, if you actually look at the painting and gain some background in it, you say, oh my God, there's so much going on in this painting. I don't need to go to the other galleries. I'll just stand in front of Botticelli. So, we can have an intuitive appreciation, but again,